What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of having my friend, your friend. He is a former AfterBuzz host. He is literally the star and the major domo of the Wassup Flobo podcast, which I will be on later tonight. Uh,
Right.
he is the one and only Flobo Boyce. Flobo, what's up, huh?
First time I heard that intro with my headphones on, and dang, that THX sounds like it was awesome. Yo, thank you so much for having the show. According to Woods, I know we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today, but the first thing I want to say is thank you, man, being a positive role model in digital space for those of us with built-in suntans, doing your thing week in and week out.
Oh man, you're too kind. But again, it's. I was watching you AfterBuzz guys, you, Hermosa, Cologne, like all of you guys. Kaufman. You guys are my. I mean, it's cool that you guys are all my friends now, but like you guys are my hero. You guys were the ones that I was looking at, and like someday, some way, I'm gonna at least earn my seat at the table. So that's kind of what it is.
That means a lot to me, man, because I felt the same way whenever I was actually there. I was like, man, someday I'll have my own show. Then that letter. No, it's funny because, like, I was on the outside too watching AfterBuzz, and you see those guys like John LaQuasto and Evan Mack, who are my friends now, and even the crew before them, like Hobo and Smiling Cats. You're just like, man, how is it possible? But then it became me at that table. It was totally like a House of Cards moment. It was nice.
Yeah, I mean, but your House of Cards fell differently than one Kevin Spacey. So there's
yeah, we're more wholesome. Like, people left. I walked in. There was no devious plans.
No, but you're like a. I call like people that compete in like pro wrestling and MMA, and I'm fresh off of like the blood sport. So like pro wrestling, MMA. That's like a dual sport athlete, but you are like the multifaceted host. You're a DJ, you're a podcast host, you're a comedian. You do so many things and so many things impeccably well. But how did it all start?
Man, that's crazy. I always felt like comedy is the through line, right? So I was a big fan of comedy. That was something I watched when I was a kid, The Tonight Show. I have respect for Leno. A lot of comedians do not. It's okay. And I took the bullet. At the time, my girlfriend got me one of those living social Groupon things to a comedy class. I did stand up for the first time August 10th, 2014. But that opened me up for everything, because once you can tell jokes on stage, you can like announce on stage. If you can announce, you could be an MC. I went to an MC course. They were doing DJ classes. I did DJ classes that way. Okay, I'm a comedian. I'm doing DJ stuff. What am I doing weeknights? Let me try to see if I get on these shows for AfterBuzz to get my name out there, so someone can actually come to a show for once and see me perform comedy live. So like it became a snowball type deal, because I went to AfterBuzz with a reason. I said, look, man, I know I'm surrounded by people who just want to be hosts, and that's great. And if I have a hosting job, I love it because I've grown to love it. But I need strangers to buy in. My family loves me. My friends will watch my stuff. But you need some strangers to be like, who's this guy? Let me share him. And that's what got into that. But yeah, it was just one that led to another, for sure.
Now, what was, in terms of like your comedy influences, like I want to know that, because I remember like the first time that I saw Red Fox on Carson, right? I was just like, and the joke that he told, it was so amazing. It still stands out to this day, where Johnny brings him out, Red is all like, and Johnny's like, and I think it might have even been Ed McMahon was like, yo, Red, what's going on? And he was like, I went to the doctor. And do you know this joke?
No, go ahead, tell us.
All right, so I went to the doctor. It was like, oh, was it serious? Like, yeah, he told me I got the Zachley disease. Like, what is that? Like, when what is it? When your breath smells exactly like your behind. And I was just like, I remember howling, laughing. I was like, oh man, this is like pre-kindergarten. And I was just like, first off, it was like a convergence of two things. I was like, whoa, Fred Sanford is on the Johnny Carson show, and to see him outside of that context, like, wait, Lamont isn't with him? Like, what are we doing? Like, he's in a suit. I'm used to, Fred Sanford being like, like a junkyard damn dealer, right?
Right.
And then when he cuts that joke, I was just like, oh, he's the funniest person ever.
Yeah, exactly. So it's funny you say that. I'll answer your question first, but I'm going to business myself right now. What made the Tonight Show so cool, and I'm a firm believer that because Seinfeld asked this question, he goes, "We who owns the Tonight Show? Is it Jack Parr? Is it Steve Allen? Is it Carson? Is it Fallon? Is it Leno?" And the answer is it's whoever you grew up with. So for me, the Tonight Show will always be with Jay Leno. Now, I like Carson. I think Carson is better in some ways. I think Fallon does it better in some ways, but the mission remains the same. You got the same 8 minutes of comedy material, acts. Didn't matter if you had a big TV or a small TV, rabbit ears, or in my family's case, there's a TV inside of a wooden case because whatever, it was the 80s. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got the same jokes and it was a great utility. You didn't know, I didn't quite understand the Clinton scandal, but I understood Monica Lewinsky jokes when Leno was telling them each and every night. And so Leno was always the biggest influence. Seinfeld was too, because he is the most structured. He writes every single joke. You never see him go or ah. He rehearses all the time. I think Chappelle is one of the greatest writers of our generation. He's the embodiment of what Mark Twain was now. Of course, we say, oh no, because you have our own political beliefs and whatever, but making fun of the system and our leaders is as American as apple pie, as Will Rogers was doing it before my parents were around. So, and Trevor Noah, one of the greatest single comedy albums I've ever experienced was Trevor Noah's Crazy Normal. This is when he was big in Africa, but quite unknown yet in the United States. And he had back then in Africa, all shows 2 hours, right? He had basically an hour and a half, 2 hour show. And majority of that was about South African politics. I sat there and I said, this guy introduced me to so many South African politicians and made me realize why they were funny. And I live halfway across the planet. So imagine when he got that job at Daily Show, I'm like, this guy knows what he's doing. Took him a couple of years to get there, but like he's become like the voice of that because he can break down more complex issues than a common person. So that's what comedy really is. And I was like, those are the big three, man. Leno, Seinfeld, Trevor Noah. Of course, I grew up with Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock. Those are all good guys too, but those three are the big ones for me.
I love that you mentioned Trevor Noah in that kind of echelon because I mean I remember the first time I saw Trevor Noah when Kamau Bell had his show on FX, right?
Yeah, really
And
biased.
basically he breaks down because Trevor, speaks so many different languages, right? And how he breaks down ordering like as a person of color, right? Ordering a Subway sandwich on a Subway, right? In German, right?
Yeah,
In like the Swiss Alps or whatever. And it, like when German people there's like this like
yeah,
it's just a way of speech, right? But again, if you're a person of color, especially a man of color, it gets taken a whole different context,
yeah,
But
yeah,
I was
yeah.
just like, oh, this is so funny, you
Yeah,
know?
he had a very similar bit about what if a Middle Eastern person was talking about the weather, but we don't know the language, so it sounds like terrorist talk. And he's like, he's just saying it's cloudy. Why is everyone upset and scared? These clouds are in rain. I can't believe it.
Yeah, no. And then I mean, in terms of like, I love how you kind of analyze, the different hosts of the Tonight Show, right? And it's the concept, right? And that's one of the things that I love about like what we're all doing, and like, I think of this as like a renaissance because like everybody has a different voice, and everybody's kind of using their own methods to kind of promote that voice, right? So,
Yeah,
that's why when people are like, "Oh, this person is the greatest of all time," or Leno, or whatever, like that
yeah,
whole concept is kind of to me, it's bumskis because I think exactly like how you think. It's like whoever you grew up with, it's subjective. The greatest of all time. We just lost Eddie Van Halen, right? Most
yeah,
people are like the great debate is, oh, David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar. Roth is the one that you kind of grew up with for a certain kind of generation, but then also Hagar was the one who had the most commercial success. To me, I'm all
yeah.
like, that's all Van Halen, right? I mean, you
Right,
look at Journey right now, they're on their eighth lead singer, but the
right, yeah,
songs are there, right? So
right.
it's all subjective in who you grew up with, and I mean, you were kind of under the influence of giants.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, and it's funny too when it comes to like the rock bands. Like the one I'm really like that like level with is Foreigner. Like you can give me all the lead singers, but Lou Gramm is Foreigner. I'm sorry, you know. But you're right, because like you can sit there and do the analyst and say, hey, Kevin Hart, he could be the greatest because he taught how to build a modern digital empire and make a platform for others. Guys, well, he's not as funny. Okay, what about some more? Back when women couldn't do the things she was doing, she's pretty great. Well, I don't know. Like you can sit there all day and talk about what's funny and what's not. And that's kind of the reason that even though we love comedians, we love comedy, we don't give comedians the awards when it comes around. Like the best picture is always a drama because it's so subjective. If I cry when someone dies, that's sad. But if I make a joke about it, well, was that appropriate? What was the temper? What's the angle? You know what I mean? What's the punchline? And it becomes this whole big thing. But you're right. I think we grew up in a good time. We grew up right after the comedy club explosion and right before the comedy collapse, when everyone was kind of like doing their own thing and doing TV shows and sitcoms. And those who decided to stick with it and get into comedy in the late 2000s and the early teens are the ones that are really about it.
No, 100%. Which I gotta ask, like, you know, almost like the Ultimate Warrior question, right? When people essentially they love the Ultimate Warrior, right? But then
Yeah.
once like wrestlers when they get into the business, or even people from behind the scenes, and like they look back at it in retrospect, and they're like, maybe it's not so great, and maybe the stuff that he says weren't so kosher, right? So like, are there any comics, that are your essential comic Ultimate Warrior where you thought they were awesome when you were younger, and
Yeah.
then you're like, maybe not so great?
I have a hard time. I have a hard time getting people my age and younger to look at Seinfeld stand up. But the same thing too. Here's a hot take for wrestling fans. If you have wrestling fans, are you more combat sports? Are you more boxing or wrestling fans who listen to your show? Wrestling is not about wrestling. It never has been. It's a three-pronged approach. Character is the most important thing. Second is the actual moves and holes, and third is storytelling. Your show can have the best storylines, like AEW, for example, but if your characters aren't defined, they're going to be seen as GoBots, right? And you can have the best characters in WWE's case, but then if the moves are pretty solid because the 4 moves of doom every week and the storyline stretches for 5 months, then you're kind of sad. So I like Steinfeld the way he does the structure. The thing is, you can't tell someone about structure if they want to enjoy comedy. And that's been the Ultimate Warrior. Because as a kid, all those, Seinfeld's an icon. When someone makes fun of a comedian, it's always, what is the deal with? That's old school Seinfeld, right? That's when
Yeah.
like how in wrestling when someone goes, okay, brother, it's always Hogan, right? Those are icons whether you like him or not. But I can tell you, going back and trying to show people, hey, this is a funny bit, I'm always feeling like the guy in the Michigan J. Frog commercials. Like, no, it's funny. Come on. Hello, baby. Hello, no. So I get it. I totally get it.
No, I mean, in terms of like coming of age, because all of the people that you mentioned, right, they had kind of either a series of moments, or a kind of singular kind of watershed moment where like, oh, like I'm doing this. This is like my profession. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. What was that for you? I mean, was it through like developing yourself through the classes? What was it?
In comedy?
Yeah.
Well, the first time I did comedy ever, it was at the Comedy Store. And it's kind of one of the most like hallowed grounds for comedians, right? So I took a class where the guy, Adam Barnhart, we recommend, he taught me a whole new craft. His graduation was 3 minutes at the Comedy Store. And 3 minutes back then was a long time because you have to convince, So that's always been like, I don't want to say from moment one, but like that was kind of like okay, maybe I can do this. But I would say the recording of my full-length album. So that was 4 years later. So there's an album called American for Now. Because when I first started doing comedy, it was more one-liners and whatever happened to me. My album, American for Now, isn't super deep, but that was me dabbling with political comedy. Not so much as I pick a side, but more of along the lines of, wait a minute, politics has now come into my life, whether I like it or not. My job in my life, my road travels. I go to Memphis with my mom, I get looked a certain way. Or I went to a wedding, I looked a certain way. I had to pick a side in the debates now because I don't know if your fans know this, but I grew up in a 2-party household. My dad is conservative, my mom is liberal. So now I have to like reckon with that. So I think that was the big moment shift for me. How do I take something that's really, really serious, I'm confused about? It's like a second puberty when it comes to things, and meld that into comedy on stage. And I think when I did that and people said, hey, look, you felt like a real comedian, which I know what they meant, but I was like, you know what, I'll take that, because that told me was I'm on the right path in that for sure.
That's cool. And I mean, have there been any kind of moments where you're just like, oh, um, this might, I mean, like kind of a gut check moment because right now in 2020, it's it's crazy for everyone, right? I mean,
Mhm.
not just in your own community, but just like worldwide, it's just nuts everywhere you look, right? And people are kind of like, oh, what I was doing, pre-March, is this what I'm supposed to be doing now, right? So, like,
Yeah.
were there any kind of like moments where you're like, maybe I didn't do the right thing. Maybe I should have went another way.
All the time, man. I had a comedy show for my alma mater the Sunday the world shut down, and or the Thursday. No, it was. I flew in the Sunday. The show was the Thursday afternoon. The world shut down that evening. 'Cause I was on the East Coast. So NBA stopped playing that Thursday, and I was in Florida the weekend where it was like, is this real or not? And coming back home to Los Angeles and having the mayor and the governor says, "Hey, non-essential personnel stay home." It was like, they legally told me I was non-essential. So yeah, there was weeks where I sat on my butt and I'm like, well, what am I gonna do? Right? I DJ weddings, crowds, stand-up comedy, crowds. I go to AfterBuzz to do these shows, and they're in small studios, smaller crowds. Like, how do I give value to this? Do I pick up a trade or craft now? But I realized that my journey in my head as a creative is the same that people are doing. Like if it was a blacksmith, if there's no work, you're still home thinking the same thing. So if anything, it's to stay the course. Financially, it's not the greatest situation to be in, but it kind of has a little bit of an advantage in my life that I was able to start work for myself before. So I understand flirting with homelessness a little bit more than it happening in March. But I think the things that are going through my head went through a lot of people's head when they said stay home, for sure.
No, I mean, I'm there with you too. Like, I think I think I'm at like 190 podcasts in like the last 4 months, right? No, I mean, no, it's just, but this is my way of kind of like, it's catharsis because like, I'm used to go, the weekend warrior, going to shows, doing post-fight interviews, and here in Southern California, whether it be BJJ, whether it be pro wrestling, whether it be MMA, Muay Thai, we had it all, and sometimes like two a days every weekend, every day of every weekend, for the last like 4 years of my life. And, I was just like, let me just do something. And then I did a couple things on Instagram and I was like, but there's too much editing. I don't like editing. But I was like, what did I want to do? It's like podcasts. And, I've got like not a classically trained radio background, kind of, right? And yeah, I'm going to pinky up. Right? But, how many radio courses or FCC regulations does Joe Rogan talk about? None, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, if I hit, shit or get off the pot, and that's kind of what I did, and that's what I love. Like you did the same. There's so many of us that did it, and we're kind of finding, ourselves and kind of reaching out to each other more so than we would have otherwise. I think this was like I hate to say like a strategic pause because like it sounds advantageous because obviously there are people that are suffering financially, suffering physically, mentally, emotionally.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, but like there's kind of this like moment where like we're like, oh, okay, like it is on me, and my success, pass or fail, it is on me. And I love the fact that whether it be podcasting, whether it be investing in the stock market, like most people are kind of like trying to figure out what the next step is. And to me, I think that's all healthy. Like if this whole kind of COVID situation is happening, like maybe I should, get something about my health. Like I love the fact like gym equipment was sold out everywhere in the last like the first 3 months of COVID. Like people were just trying to like figure shit out. And no matter how dark and dreary life can be, like I just love that people are always going to figure things out. They're, to use a chromatic metaphor, if everybody's in the cave, somebody has to kind of venture out. Yeah, they might get eaten by a fucking pterodactyl. That might happen. But I mean, we're all kind of figuring it out, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's some things that I wouldn't have tried had I had the same world going. Because I mean, not to brag, but I have Wassup Flobo, Wassup Flobo After Hours, Draped in Gold, the NXT After Show, Commander's Log, the Star Trek Discovery After Show, and a podcast with creative people called New Amsterdam. And I do all those weekly, and I treat myself as if I'm employed because I'm working for myself in that way. And even things I've tried, like I tried musical comedy because I had the time. Now, conversely, like I am not reading up travel and vacations. I spent so many hours looking at places I want to go visit back when I could. When that was off the table, I was like, all right, we're using that brain power elsewhere. So yeah, I think and I know it's hard to say a lot of good came from this because a lot of things did not come from this. And I'm one person, two persons removed from people who actually died from this disease. But at the same time, it does allow you to refocus. You can take that as spiritually as you want. You can say you prayed some more. You can say you refocus your priorities. But a lot of things that came to help build this came from that. And whether or not I can call you up and go, man, you want to be on my show? It's a difference between, hey, you want to be on my show? Here's a sample of what I've done, rather than being like, yeah, it'd be a cool idea if you want to come by and talk about it once. I don't know.
No, that makes perfect sense. That makes absolute perfect sense. But I mean, when I hear stuff like that, I get in my head and I'm like, damn, he's so good at like everything, right? And for me, here's the funny thing about it. So with pro wrestling, I kind of was like, okay, because as a kid of like, I graduated in 2000, right? 2003. I aged myself 3 years, but anyway.
We're the same age. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we're the same age, right? For me, I saw like the Lord of the Rings, the Pokemon, and whatever, and I was like, I've already got this like wrestling thing, right? And at that point, like Comic-Cons weren't what they are now, right?
Yeah.
Where, they were just like, bunch of dudes and gals, converging in San Diego, maybe a couple thousand people, it wasn't this kind of like, pop culture lexicon event, right? So
right.
I was just like, oh man, wrestling, I'm already kind of on the trajectory to be in my mom's basement with this thing. And I was just like, maybe I won't pick up other things, right? And then I hear people like yourself or fighters that, they'll be warming up for a fight and they're talking about Pokemon. And I'm like, or Marvel, the cinematic universe. And I'm like, damn, like I put all my eggs in one basket and shit like that. And I wish I was more versed. But I was just like, you know what? I'm going to make what I can out of what I know. And that's kind of all I know.
Well, it's all about strategy, man. And one thing I always tell this, I feel like people our age were like veterans of a lost war because we were the last generation where you used to get beat up for being a nerd, right? Because I read Archie comics. Archie comics were my thing because I read so advanced that my tutor would give me stuff to read. But what I'm saying is it's a strategy. Because like I can say, hey, look, I love wrestling. I love talking about creative people. I love doing things. I'm also a comedian, so comedy first. This guy can talk about this thing. He could be a talk show host. But I guarantee you, man, if you said, hey, the producers of According to Woods comes this brand new Dungeons and Dragons show, I'm like, what the hell is Adam K's take on this? Let me go check this out. And that's like, let's call it the brand extension, right? It's you in a different space, as opposed to me being like the brand blanketing, where I'm like, my face is everywhere. You can't put my name in Google without having me somewhere, So like, keep doing it, man. If you want to do it, bro. And if it doesn't work out, you tried it out. You can just say, oh, season finale. Just put it aside.
Yeah. That's a creative way out, a season finale. Yeah. No, but I mean that's why you're like 100 some odd podcasts, but like I hear stuff like that, or like what Hermosa's doing with a wrestling chatter or whatever, and I'm like, you guys are doing like so many things. Like I have to earn my place at the table, so like I have to just hit it right, and then I also feel like, I brought it up in a previous podcast, and it really made sense. Like I feel like I'm like Macaulay Culkin in The Page Master, right? And you've got all of these fucking stories, right? You got. Okay. You didn't think you were gonna get that.
No, I didn't think at all. I was like, which kid? Homo.
Yeah, but like everybody has a story, right? And as kind of this, and I dare call myself like a journalist or whatever, but like as a personality, there's so many people that have so many stories, right? And then like I'll see it across my timeline and like, oh, this person got a fight. Oh, this person is wrestling here. Oh, they just opened their pro wrestling tees and whatever. Oh, they just started their YouTube. Oh, they're on Podbean. Oh, whatever. And I'm just like, oh, I got to get them on. I got to get that. Like, there's something in me, like, I'm like, yeah, I'm only going to do like, 2 a week and whatever. And then, like, I wake up Monday morning, check my timeline. I'm like, up. And next thing you know, by Friday, I've got 12 in the can.
Yeah, it's a muscle. It's a muscle because the moment you go, man, I wish I could do that. Whatever. I don't buy that. Like, okay, let's use your example. Let's see the table. Yes, that table is one of those like Victorian England Hogwarts, like 45 seat long, and we can't get there because we're new. But you can't tell me you can't go down the corner and get some cheap lumber and start building a little table now too. Like I said, when people start and they do one episode, and they stop. That's even worse than not even trying it. Because when someone doesn't try, you can say maybe they're just too tired. But when you build something and you go, it's not worth building on some more, then you basically shot yourself in the foot. So, yeah, man, props to you. If you got the killer instinct to get 12 interviews, cool. Because what you can do, you can bank them, you can remix them, you can roll them out when you feel like it. We go on vacation to the Maldives. Man, go for it, man.
Yeah, but that's a cool thing. And that's why I just don't feel like we should support each other. This is like, because again, this is like this kind of creative revolution that's going on right now,
Yeah.
and again, like, going to school, like I was going from Inglewood High, Inglewood, the city of Inglewood, right after I graduated high school, to Orange County on the bus, 4 hours each way, to go to broadcasting school, right? I was doing that. And then still there was like FCC regulations and whatever, interning for 5 to 15 years, before you even get like a 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning slot. And that might be in Tupelo, Mississippi, in a converted barn, but like,
Yeah.
that was what it was. Right. And now you don't have to worry about it. Like, YouTube is not, of course, like people are like, YouTube is like so regulatory, or Facebook or whatever. And I'm like, dude, you got a studio in your phone, right? So like that mixtape that you want, and it's a pro and con type thing, because like, that mixtape that you want to, do and whatever, like you can do it at a podcast, that piece of content, whatever. You can get it to the people the way you want to, unfiltered, the way you want it to sound, and everything, and don't have to, go across like 12 yes men to kind of validate you, right? But then the catch-22 is like, like there's motherfuckers at Venice Beach, they're slanging CDs and shit like that, and I'm like, hey,
I can take myself out. No, it's one of those things, like it's almost like F1, like where you could be falling behind, but a strategic crash causes a safety car, and you get to line up again. And it's like, this is a break. This was the biggest safety car of the world, because before AfterBuzz went on hiatus, these shows were just like this. They're a different platform, professional grade thing, but it was us. And I had to go buy a fake plant because I'm a bachelor, so I'm going to add a little bit of a home decor to do these shows. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it myself. But yeah, I don't have the audience AfterBuzz does, but you can't tell me what I'm doing isn't as good or bad as anyone else. So if I make it real now with these footage, everyone's going to say, 2020. That's been closed. So it really comes down to what you want. I totally get it, man. Like, you sit there and you see these on the other side, when people do a couple of sketches on Instagram and they get booked to do comedy shows, and you're just sitting there going like, but I tried. And it's like, it's all business. These promoters at these shows don't care about your feelings. They don't care about your craft. They want to make that money. Your job as an artist is to make your craft valuable enough that it makes you money. Right? You can't get mad if you don't appreciate your craft. So like, that just tells me you got to find some way to get out there so someone can book you to get spots. You can go, hey, I'm back, baby.
No, 100%. And I'd be remiss not to talk about AfterBuzz, because you getting on that show, that platform, I think it almost it did enhance what you were already doing, and gave you a greater platform, greater visibility. So how did that kind of whole thing work out? And then also, what is your like fondest or greatest memory of doing those shows?
It's a funny thing because, again, I went to AfterBuzz because I was a comedian. I wasn't getting booked. And so I figured, hey, look, jump on these shows, and then maybe I can do it. Now, I love wrestling. I grew up with it. WWF was my jam. I love Tatanka and all that. We talked about that a little earlier. But I was willing to open myself up to do anything. So I did the course. I signed up because they changed the process. You needed someone to write a recommendation for you now. You needed a reel. You needed the whole application. Did all that. And I stood in the lobby of AfterBuzz, like I was at Home Depot. I was like, "You want to be on the show? You need someone to be on the show? How about you be on the show?" and I did like the Flash one week. I did like All American on CW one. I did every show from every place because if I knew the content, like the Flash, great. If I didn't, like All American, we'll be in for a ride, baby. We'll make it happen because I was there. And I think a lot of people don't realize that when it comes to talent gets you so far. Talent will get you to the dance, but what keeps you at the dance is having someone being able to rely on you. Everyone boos John Cena, but John Cena came out. Everyone knew what he was doing. He didn't get caught night before the strip club. Did his 5 moves to doom and was on the plane to the next city. That's why Vince trusted him. Same with Roman Reigns back when he was a face. He came into this thing. So I was doing that, and it was on a show called American Gods, which is a very niche show, but because there's less content for that show, people gotta gravitate and lift that show up. The head of the network, Kevin Nagaro, was saying, what do you want to do? I'm like, hey, look, I do one of your shows. I did wrestling shows, did a wrestling program. And we kind of like linked there. So that was my fondest memory, having the head of the network know who I am, because AfterBuzz at its maximum had about 400 hosts, and I was able to break through. But to me, though, the Raw and NXT after shows were a whole different thing. Now, Raw and NXT, there's no reruns at all. And when I got to AfterBuzz, I thought it was a closed door. I thought it was a boys' club. You couldn't get in there. And if it wasn't for Christy Olsen and Steve Kaufman, who got me on a side show, they were trying to do a after show for something to wrestle with for Bruce Pritchard. It lasted 6 weeks. So me and Jim Alexander were on that show. And then when that finished, Raw at the same time was having problems with attendance from the hosts. They asked us to try out. We got in the Raw show. And I was like, I'm on the Raw show. I'm going to be here early every week. And you could ask Evan T. Mack. You could ask Jack Farmer. Didn't matter how cold or how hot it was or what time work ended. I made sure to be there every single week. Okay, if the problem is attendance and you're there every day, you're now made yourself an option. You now made yourself invaluable. And so I was on the Raw flagship. And when Evan got called up in September of last year, I was given the reins to run the show. And that to me was like the Tonight Show. Right? People love the Evan Mack era. People like the Flobito era. We were 2 different shows, 2 different responsibilities. And I kind of bled over to NXT because I was there also. So I guess the fondest memory is just going there, showing up, putting the head down, not being a niche person. I only do these kind of shows. And then over time, the head of the network knew who I was. Maria Menounos called me up when they had Charlotte Flair and Kofi Kingston this year for interviews because they knew who I was, and it paid dividends. And that's a very long answer. I apologize. But that was
no, this is what this is about. Because again, I love it. I absolutely love it because again, there are, and this is kind of the kind of ideology that I had when I first started doing this, and it's weird because it sounds like so long ago, but it was like 3-4 months, like May is when I was like really, adamant that I'm going to do this. And I was just like, one, it's a way to reach out to friends, right? And bring people in the conversation, because especially right now, people feel like we're alone. Like, we're in our house for the most part, and everybody needs a canary in the coal mine. So, maybe having people that have gone through strife in their life, extreme strife, right? And then came back from it, and been able to do that. And the second part of it is, again, I guess it's kind of compounded with the first part, is, again, checking on how people are, and really engaging people, going live, having people, comment and everything like that. This is a community, Yeah, Comic-Cons aren't what they used to be. 100%. Thank you, good sir. Yeah.
The thing is, I would make a point to buy a comic book for that reason, because people forgot about comic books. But you were saying.
No, but that's exactly it. And and in terms of like, format or whatever, like I went into like the first couple of them. I was just like, I went into like radio, like even though it was like 15 years removed, I went into format, whatever, right? And then I would hear somebody say something, right? And we go down a wormhole the other way. And I literally threw my format right across the room, and I said, fuck it. According to Woods, is it whatever you want it to be on that day? We can talk about MMA and pro wrestling because that's what you're involved in, or we can not, and that's cool. Like having Barnett on, right? Josh Barnett, and all we did for damn near 90 minutes is just talking about wrestling. You know, that's it.
It's funny. One of the most underrated late night talk show host, Craig Ferguson, would do that. He would have his questions, and then he'd go, "All right, let's talk about this, that, and that." And he got a Peabody Award, so he's doing something right.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, and it's being able to, look at people that are more. I don't want to say more successful because that kind of cheapens it, but I mean they're kind of, a little bit longer in terms of their journey than you are, right? And you look at what their success is and whatever, and you take in what you can apply to yourself, and then there's some that are going to be a byproduct that you're just going to leave there, and maybe you revisit it, or you don't. But I mean, at least you know that you don't know. And that's, again, this kind of convergence of like all of this and you on, because again, like having you or jumping on Hermosa's, because I was looking at you guys and you're like, that is success for the, the short term deal. Maybe I'll be here. So I mean, it's really cool that not only you're here now, but I will actually be a guest on What's Up Flobo late night tonight. Um, but it's just, this is cool because again, it's like there's no. We all have a story to tell, and we're all telling it differently, and it's just. I don't know. It's cool. Like I'm learning from you. Not to say you'll ever learn from me, but again, thank you for being, that constant.
Well, I think it's kind of like the Versa Vice thing. We look at people who are doing things consistently, and I'll tell you this: like as someone who does all these shows, and I love doing them, I love it. But as someone in my mid-30s, there's a time where you're sitting there and you're going like, "Am I just hanging outside at the curfew? Like, is mom going to be like, yo, do you think?" It's like what we're doing. My parents are immigrants, right? What we're doing doesn't exist. Like my grandparents cut sugar cane for a living. They got up and they chopped a crop. That was it. My mom was a nurse. My dad was an electrician or electrical engineer. So when I got into entertainment, it was already fuzzy to begin with. But you're in these weeks and months, you're going, dude, I've been doing the new AMSAM radio podcast, a show I'm really proud about. Cause I get to sit down with creatives and talk about what makes them tick. And I'm getting the same views week in, week out. Like I'm an algorithm. This sucks. What I mean? Where's my day going to come? That happens almost daily, if not multiple times a day. So when I see someone like According to Woods on like 4 different platforms being like, okay, he's breading the hell out of the show, I'm going to see what it's about. That's the reason. It wasn't like I just picked a Rolodex and was like, this guy. It was like, okay, yeah, in my day, I'm seeing Woods doing this guy and that guy. Yes, well, you have 2 interviews today. Like, you don't stop. And so iron sharpens iron there. Because there's days I'm like, forget it. I'll probably just look for a job at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. No, I won't be happy doing that. Let's keep going. Let's keep going.
Well, see, I mean, and it's that convergence, right? Because like I was on a couple of my friends' podcasts, especially right as COVID happened, and UFC started kind of coming back and doing those shows in Florida, and they were using StreamYard, and I was like, oh, what is this and whatever, and they're like, here, check this out, right? And StreamYard was, I mean, in total disclosure, I mean, it's kind of like the ultimate help for all of us content creators, right? But I didn't know about it, prior to May, right? And then when I finally got it, it was the very thing that I'd wanted my entire life, without formats, just to kind of get what you needed, to the people that you wanted to get to, and even engage other people. So once that happened, I was like, fuck, and there's a monthly payment attached, and again, I want everyone, if it's in your heart to start one of these, absolutely do it. Total disclosure, drop in those DMs, man. I will encourage you. I will whatever, just like I've been encouraged, much like you and so many other people that have kind of brought me, along for the ride. And I'm just like, if it's in you to do. But again, this is what I've been waiting for. This is something that, I mean, my mom, when I was watching wrestling growing up all over the place, right? She, she, much like your parents, was an immigrant of Fiji, right?
Yeah.
My grandfather in Fiji was the Walter Cronkite of Fiji, the very first broadcaster in the history of the country, right? So when I would be watching wrestling and going like, I'm gonna wrestle. My dad's 6'4", I'm part ADOS, American descent to their slaves, and then Fijian on the other side. I've got aunties that are 6'1". Like I'm gonna be a giant, go wrestle in Japan, burn out my knees, then end up at a commentator spot, right? And then when I filled out to 5'9" at 21, I was like, maybe not, right? But again, it's all this process, and again, having kind of this you might think you know what your success is going to be, but it's a constant evolution, and that's what you're doing with everything that you're doing.
Yeah, the constant evolution. And I always tell people that if you don't write down what you think your goals are, whether you do a year or every couple of months, you will move the chains. You will always go, well, I'm not as good as Tom Brady, or well, I ain't LeBron level yet, and that's great to keep you motivated, but that totally will bite you back in the butt. So every year, every December 31st, I write 2 bucket lists. I have one that's overall for my life. I check that off, and I write one for the next year. 2020, I'm doing this. And I can do a year in review the next year. Okay, I got those 8 things done. Those 2 things I couldn't get done at all. Those 3 things I could have got done, but I did not get done. Or what can I move over? That way I can measure myself as if I was a business. And that's kind of the weirdest thing about it, because we're all artists, we're all creatives. But what the difference between an artist and a professional is that a professional does it when they're not even feeling it. Right? I'm sure LeBron gets up being like, I don't feel like practicing today, but I have to, because I have to keep myself sharp. And I think that's what you're talking about. Your process. Hey, look, you didn't say, oh, I'm 5'9", guess I'm gonna go work at the Wiz. No, it's like, okay, I'm 5'9", I have this brain, I got this lineage, right? I got this skin color. How am I gonna make all these elements of Woods work for me in a way that I'm proud of what I do?
No, that's it, and that's exactly what you're doing with everything, including the very podcast that I will be on tonight. Right?
Yeah, come through.
We're gonna have some fun, right? Maybe
Yeah,
some adult beverages. Swap this out with a mango cart from Golden
yeah.
Road, and take off your pants and jacket like the Good Brothers, or cake, say. But I mean, tell us about everything that you're doing. What's up, Flobo, and everything else, and where
Oh
can
man,
people find it?
how long is the show gonna be?
That's it.
My normal blog is called Wassup Flobo. That's every Wednesday and Fridays on YouTube at youtube.com/Flobo Boyce. Every Monday night, the late night show, Wassup Flobo After Hours, 10 p.m. Pacific, live stream on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitch. The website is flowpito.com. You can buy a t-shirt like this one at flowpito.threadless.com. And if you're like saying, this guy is dope, I want to support him, please do at patreon.com/Flobo Boyce. Be a member of the boisterous crew and get exclusive content.
Damn. All right. So, what can people find out when they check out the After Hours show tonight with you and I both?
Oh yeah, What's Up Flobo After Hours has become quickly the flagship. I get with someone who's very, very cool, smooth, like my man over here, Woods. We talk about their lives, we talk about the news in the past week with a little bit of a comedic spin, and there's a live chat action too. We talk back and forth. It's a good time, and yes, adult beverages will be had.
Damn right, dude. I can't wait. I'm literally chomping at the bit. Like you can see the molars there. It's yeah. Let's take a bite out of crime, McGruff. I mean, well, I don't know where the fuck that was going, but anyway, check him out at Flobo Boyce, literally everywhere. And again, come back. We warmly encourage you to come back and grab a T-shirt while you're at it. Why not?
Hey.
Right? But warmly encourage you to join us at What's Up Flobo tonight, 10 p.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. in Eastern, right? Something like that. I'm good at words, but not good at numbers.
That's why we're creative people. It's cool.
Yeah, man. But Flobo, it has been an honor and privilege. I've been a fan. I've been a friend for a while, and I'm glad that we're doing this. And I'm glad that we're doing this like Miley Cyrus. I really wanted to do like a better best of both worlds, and Van Halen had a best of both worlds. But not to say I don't love you, but that is more of a love song. Hannah Montana just kind of fit what we were doing today.
You can't do the R. Kelly one either, so I understand. We can't do that Jay-Z R. Kelly one because we both be Jay-Z. That'd be weird. So
that's it. Or we could do that old school Wayans Brothers theme song. We're happy and there. Never mind. Yeah. But check us out tonight. Follow this guy because it's awesome, and I have. So again, this has been According to Woods, and usually I would tell you to like, share, and subscribe, and I definitely want you to do it. But if you don't just take my word for it, you're somebody else.
Hey, this is Zeta Zhang. Make sure you subscribe to According to Woods YouTube.